Today, Binance announces its exit from Canada. We explain why. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signs a CBDC bill into law. And EMURGO's Vineeth Bhuvanagiri discusses how experimental new tokens on Bitcoin's blockchain are affecting the network. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Pippa Stevens. Crypto prices are starting the week in the green. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin traded above $27,000, Ether traded above $1,800, and Solana traded right around $21. Okay, let's talk about the top stories. First up, Binance announced it's pulling out of Canada weeks after the country issued a series of new guidelines for crypto exchanges. In a tweet on Friday afternoon, the company said it's, quote, proactively withdrawing from the Canadian marketplace and that new guidance related to stablecoins and investor limits provided to crypto exchanges makes the Canada market no longer tenable for Binance at this time. Canada's new guidelines include investor limits as well as mandatory registrations. According to the Ontario Securities Commission, companies that don't comply with the rules will face potential enforcement action. Binance tweeted that it doesn't agree with the new guidance and hopes to continue to engage with Canadian regulators so that it can one day return to the Canadian market. Next, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill restricting the use of central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, in the state. The governor tweeted that the legislation he signed on Friday makes Florida the first state in the nation to protect individuals from government surveillance in their personal finances through a CBDC. He also tweeted this photo of the signed bills and wrote, "Florida is standing firm and protecting our consumers against the efforts to impose a central bank digital currency, which would shift purchasing power from consumers to the government." In March, DeSantis first announced the legislation aimed at protecting Florida residents from the Biden administration's, quote, weaponization of the financial sector through a CBDC. Last, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman's crypto project, known as WorldCoin, keeps attracting investors, even though it's still in beta. Citing 3 people with knowledge of the deal, the Financial Times reported that WorldCoin is, quote, in advanced talks on a new round of financing worth around $100 million. One of those people claimed the round is backed by both existing and new investors. Those reportedly include Andreessen Horowitz, which previously invested in WorldCoin. We reached out to the firm but didn't immediately hear back. We also reached out to WorldCoin and OpenAI, and a WorldCoin spokesperson told us it was, quote, unable to comment on fundraising speculation. All right, on to our main story. Bitcoin transaction fees spiked to a 2-year high earlier this month, thanks to demand around experimental new tokens on the network. One of those tokens, called ordinals, make it possible to store digital content on Bitcoin's blockchain, with some even calling it Bitcoin NFTs. Some analysts told CNBC that it could signal a new era of Bitcoin. Crypto World's Tanea McKeel spoke with Vineeth Bhuvanagiri, managing director at EMURGO, to find out how demand for these tokens is affecting Bitcoin's network.
I want to talk about ordinals because those, they're not exactly a new concept, but they were really making the headlines earlier this month. And I think that momentum has died down a little bit, but I want to dig into a little bit more because I don't think it's something that our audience is that familiar with. So to keep it simple to start, what exactly is an ordinal? We hear the phrase Bitcoin NFT or NFTs on the Bitcoin network. Is that right to you? Would you describe it the same way?
Yeah, I would say that description is quite accurate. So ordinals are a way for you to inscribe NFTs onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So you can upload videos, documents, photos, so on and so forth. But if you want to break it down to a level further, it's basically you're paying for price rationed access to the Bitcoin blockchain and the Bitcoin's distributed database. So anything that you kind of want to upload into the Bitcoin blockchain and have that live there permanently in an immutable fashion is something that you can do with ordinals, which is really exciting, I would think, compared to the other blockchains that currently exist.
As a user, like if I'm the one, creating the NFTs or buying the NFTs, why would I want them on Bitcoin versus Ethereum?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So on the Ethereum blockchain, like if you're creating an NFT, it's a specific type of token on the Ethereum blockchain called an ERC 721. So the token that gets issued specifically for the purpose of that NFT, has a metadata pointer. It's basically a way for you to show where the actual image or file or NFT that you have is actually sitting. But that image does not actually sit on the Ethereum blockchain. It's stored on a distributed file service like IPFS. On the Bitcoin blockchain, those images, those NFTs, or anything else that you put directly sits on top of the Bitcoin blockchain itself. So it has all of the safety, security, impermeability, and permanence that comes inherent with the Bitcoin blockchain that you don't see anywhere else. The other thing that I would say is kind of a differentiating factor is with a Bitcoin, you have the underlying Satoshis, which is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, and these have already been mined. And what you're doing is you're just adding additional, I would say, information to that Satoshi to make it go from being a fungible asset to a non-fungible asset. So I would say predominantly it's just due to the fact that it's core on the Bitcoin blockchain in and of itself, as opposed to it existing somewhere else with pointers that exist within another blockchain that has NFTs that operate.
So, can you explain how this became, even if it was a little bit fleeting, how this became such a hot topic so suddenly a couple of weeks ago? Like I said at the top, I remember hearing about ordinals for the first time months ago. So, what is happening? What's taking place right now that sort of put it in the spotlight again?
I think the recent uptick in ordinals was predominantly due to the tooling to make it more accessible to, I would say, average users. Like this concept of inscribing information onto Bitcoins has been around for quite a bit of time. Like in the early days, 2014, 2015, concept of color coins came out, and then it kind of progressed. But the two recent updates to the Bitcoin protocol, which was SegWit and Taproot, allowed for ordinals to take place. But at the early days of that, it was more so people that could interact directly with Bitcoin CLI. There wasn't really a nice UI UX or a easy way for regular users to be able to update or inscribe NFTs onto Bitcoin, and the marketplaces weren't fully there yet. So I think the recent uptick was more so just due to tooling and easier access for people to be able to interact with this technology, even though some of the base for the technology has been around for, I would say, a little bit.
So why should investors care about this? I mean, obviously NFTs have sort of showed people that there's more to crypto than just Bitcoin, but a lot of people also are still just wrapping their heads around NFTs. It's still too abstract for them or too futuristic for them. So what should the key takeaway be for investors when it comes to ordinals?
I think if investors are looking at Bitcoin from more so a macro perspective, watching to see which side of the fence the Bitcoin, I would say, core community ends up falling down is incredibly important because in the previous days, so like the main topic of contention, I would say, with ordinals is block size. So the more information that you put onto the Bitcoin blockchain, the heavier it becomes, the more cumbersome it becomes. And in the past, this has led to quite a few debates and quite a few forks of Bitcoin, including Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV. And so investors watching this would probably be interested in the fact that if it continues down this route, would Bitcoin actually continue to be used as its main purpose? Right now, the clearing times for Bitcoin are around 10 minutes, but with the influx of ordinals, your transactions, if you want to send, let's say, a couple $1,000s to somebody, the clearing times ended up getting delayed due to the amount of network traffic on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so if Bitcoin kind of loses its product market fit in regards to being a way to move large amounts of funds in a censorship resistant manner, and it's more so a storage system for photos, videos, so on and so forth, that may substantially impact the price of Bitcoin. The other thing that investors should be looking at in this regard is in regards to the mining hash power on the network, because that's what provides the network with its security, with its safety. And that's what separates Bitcoin from all of its other forks is just the sheer amount of computing power that secures the network. And so watching, I would say, those dynamics to see is ordinals going to be something that gets pushed out of the Bitcoin ecosystem to focus on what its current core competencies are, or is this a new and evolving market that's going to pop up?
One last thing before we go, billionaire hedge fund manager Paul Tudor Jones was on Squawk Box this morning where he says he is not backing away from his bet on Bitcoin, but thinks regulation and, surprisingly, AI could hurt the chance of a near-term rally. Take a listen.
I'm sticking with it. I'm going to always stick with it as just a small diversification in my portfolio. Bitcoin has a real problem because in the United States, you have the entire regulatory apparatus against it. So it's just kind of yesterday's news. And if inflation's truly done a bit, if that story's been played, then you have to wonder, we were buying gold and Bitcoin for the inflation hedges. That game may be over. I would, 6 months ago, before AI, before the possible productivity boost that we'll get for it, I would have said a completely different story with regard to the inflationary future and with regard to all the inflation hedges.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we are back again tomorrow, and we'll see you then.